If you get divorced, it's all your fault.
Catherine's words from some time ago echoed in my mind. But I couldn't care less about her pressure anymore. After all, I had just discovered that Robert, standing right in front of me, was a loving father to a little girl I'd never met. Robert had been celebrating his illegitimate child's birthday at the most luxurious restaurant in town. When I suddenly appeared in the middle of their family gathering, Robert went pale. Holding the child in his arms, Robert was caught between his mistress and me, sweating profusely and visibly panicked. Putting on my brightest smile, I cheerfully declared, "You have another family. Wishing you all the happiness." It turned out the child was born before Robert and I had even met. In other words, I was his other woman. If that's the case, the one who should step back is me. Well then, please live happily as a family. I'm Emily, 30 years old. I just had a lovely daughter, Amelia. You'd think my husband, Robert, and I would be living happily as a family of 3. But unfortunately, Robert is hardly ever around, so it's pretty much just Amelia and me most of the time. Robert and I met at a piano school. I was the instructor, and Robert came in as a student. Initially, his mother, Catherine, was the one attending the lessons, but after some time, she introduced Robert, who then joined the class. He wanted a hobby to unwind from work. With only a little experience playing a harmonica in elementary school, Robert was awkward and tense at first. However, he was very open-minded and dedicated to practicing. So little by little, he discovered the joy of playing the piano. About 6 months later, Robert asked me out, and eventually we got married. The piano, which I've loved since I was a child, brought us together. Soon after we got married, I became pregnant, and our newlywed life started off smoothly. However, I always felt a little uncomfortable around Catherine. She had a bright, energetic personality and wasn't a bad person, but she was very outspoken. Though a bit pushy at times, she was kind in her own way. But on the day Amelia was born, Catherine completely changed. Even now, I can't forget what happened that day. When Catherine came to the hospital, she ignored me entirely and rushed to Amelia with a glowing smile.
Amelia, Grandma's here. Oh.
Catherine, who had been visibly excited, suddenly froze. Before I could wonder what was wrong, she said something unbelievable.
What? This baby. She's ugly.
What? I couldn't immediately process what she meant and gave her a half smile. Catherine, looking utterly disappointed, turned to me with a serious expression. The moment her eyes met mine as I sat on the bed, her face shifted to one of shock, her eyes wide with disbelief.
Are you Emily?
Oh, I just gave birth, so I'm sorry for my no-makeup face and exhausted look. It had only been about an hour since giving birth. After enduring a full day of labor and not having eaten properly, I probably looked extremely worn out. I noticed my messy hair and tried to smooth it down with my fingers.
You've deceived me.
Catherine glared at me as if I were some kind of monster.
You're ugly.
Covering her mouth as if she felt sick, Catherine continued.
Your eyes are tiny, and your nose, it's so round. Even the shape of your lips looks different. You have such a plain, unattractive face. You're ugly.
Faced with her relentless insults, all I could do was lower my head slightly. It's true. I'm not a beautiful person. That's why I practiced makeup and gained a little confidence in my appearance. But now, postpartum and feeling close to Catherine, I had let my guard down and shown her my real face, something I deeply regretted.
I feel dizzy. This ugly Amelia must take after you. Poor thing. What cruel genetics. If I had known you were this unattractive, I never would have allowed the marriage in the first place. Was I foolish to rush Robert into marriage just because he was over 30? No, this feels like fraud.
I'm aware that I'm not beautiful, but surely my looks aren't bad enough to warrant this kind of verbal lashing. What hurt the most was that Amelia was insulted too. Harsh words kept forming in my mind, but I was so shaken by the sudden attack that I couldn't speak.
You made yourself out to be a graceful piano teacher who even has a childcare license, showing off how much you love kids. I thought you were the perfect wife for Robert, but who knew your face was a lie? And the way you carry yourself, so elegant and well-mannered, I used to admire it. Turns out it was all a trap to hide your looks. How manipulative.
Before I gave birth, Catherine had really liked me, thinking I was a kind-hearted young woman. We got married after only a year of dating, thanks in large part to her support. I never imagined our good relationship would collapse over something like my bare face. After saying everything she wanted to, Catherine left without even holding Amelia. The hospital room was silent for a while. Then, I heard a dry laugh behind me.
Newborns are usually all chubby, right? Mom must have been shocked to see Amelia so red and wrinkled as a newborn. Emily, I'm sorry she upset you.
Okay. It suddenly hit me Robert was there the whole time. I nodded at his apology without thinking, but later, the thought welled up inside me. Why hadn't he spoken up and confronted Catherine in the moment? Still, I stayed silent.
She just had such high expectations for her first grandchild. She didn't mean any harm. Emily, I'm really sorry.
Robert kept apologizing, and I couldn't bring myself to blame him. But from then on, Catherine, who had completely lost her kindness toward me, began criticizing me at every opportunity.
Oh, you actually look decent today. You're really good at transforming yourself, aren't you? So how many hours does it take you to do that makeup? With a newborn like Amelia, do you even have the time to spend hours on makeup? I bet you're too busy staring at your ugly face in the mirror to even look at Amelia. That's neglecting your child, isn't it?
That's not true. I would never neglect Amelia. I do spend some time on my makeup, but I always finish while Amelia is sleeping. Not long after I got home from the hospital, Catherine showed up unannounced on a weekday morning and started with this. Robert, wearing an awkward smile, continued eating his breakfast.
If you have time to put on makeup while Amelia is sleeping, you should focus on proper housekeeping. Is Robert's breakfast just bread? That's way too plain. Poor thing.
There's fruit too, I replied quietly. Catherine looked shocked and let out a dramatic sigh.
Fruit doesn't count as a proper dish. And what's this? Is this an apple?
Catherine frowned and pointed at the apple. Even though it was just an ordinary piece of fruit, she looked at it as if it were something disgusting.
Why haven't you peeled the apple? Did your family eat apples with the peel on? How uncultured. And your mother is a homemaker, isn't she? A homemaker who doesn't even bother to peel apples. How lazy. Even when I was busy working and raising Robert alone, I always peeled apples.
Apparently, Catherine had divorced when Robert was a child. She had once proudly declared that she'd left her cheating husband. It was clear from her remarks that she took great pride in raising Robert on her own.
Robert, I'm sorry. I'm the one who recommended Emily, and now you've fallen for a fraud.
What? Oh, yes.
Caught off guard, Robert laughed awkwardly.
I thought Emily, as a piano teacher, seemed like a great match. We were completely fooled, weren't we?
Robert neither agreed nor disagreed. He glanced at me briefly, looking troubled, then left most of his breakfast untouched as he stood up.
I need to get to work.
Oh, is it already time? Have a good day. Robert, you're so admirable, working hard for your family.
Yeah.
Robert hurried out, leaving a strained silence between Catherine and me.
I'll be heading home too.
She left without even glancing at Amelia. It seemed she came only to check on her beloved Robert. Catherine stood at the doorway and muttered expressionlessly.
When I got divorced, even though I was the victim, my relatives blamed me, saying things like, just because he cheated, or you weren't patient enough, it was all that cheating jerk's fault. I wasn't to blame at all. Robert doesn't resemble that worthless husband one bit. He's a serious good boy. I raised him with all the love I had.
Her voice was low, a stark contrast to her earlier accusatory tone, and it sent a chill down my spine.
Letting him marry you was a big mistake. I want to get him divorced right away and set him free. But it's unfair to brand Robert with a failed marriage when he's done nothing wrong. And you wouldn't want to be divorced, would you?
I felt as if someone had grabbed my heart and squeezed. Catherine stepped closer to me, waving a divorce paper in my face like a threat. She was making it clear that she believed any divorce would be entirely my fault.
If it comes to a divorce, you'll bear all the responsibility. Since you're married, be the perfect wife. You got a good outward appearance, so make the same effort at home. Compensate for your looks in other ways. If you get divorced, you'll be the one suffering. Got it?
Catherine had an excellent public image. She was cheerful, outgoing, and well-connected, even expanding her social circle through my piano school. If it ever came to a divorce, she might spread malicious rumors about me. I got it. The word slipped out of my mouth unconsciously. That night, Robert apologized to me again.
I'm sorry about Mom. You know, since it was just the two of us without my dad, she's always been a little strong-willed.
I figured that confronting someone as headstrong as Catherine would only make her more hysterical. That's probably why Robert smiled faintly and stayed non-committal. But he's the only one who can shield me from her. Are you really okay with me being treated so horribly? It's not just me. Amelia and even my mom are being ridiculed too. Even when I confronted Robert, he just looked troubled.
Well, but Mom's not exactly wrong, is she?
What? I had expected another apology, so his response was so unexpected that I was speechless.
I mean, the way she says things is harsh, and that's not right. I'm sorry about that.
He smiled gently, seemingly unaware of how shocked I was.
But, you know, as my wife, I'd like you to endure it. Taking care of the house, raising Amelia, and managing family relationships. That's a wife's role, right?
My mind went blank.
But Emily, I don't want you to suffer alone. So from now on, I'll visit Mom regularly and try to keep her from coming to the house.
Seeing me stunned and apparently not angry anymore, Robert seemed to convince himself that the problem was resolved. True to his word, Robert became my shield. He started visiting Catherine's house before and after work, and it seemed to satisfy her. Thanks to this, the unannounced visit stopped. However, Robert began staying overnight at Catherine's house every Saturday, and eventually, the days he was away from home on weekdays also increased. Since starting this shielding plan, Robert's visits home dwindled to just 2 or 3 times a month. This could hardly be called a successful plan. 3 months flew by, and it was almost time for Amelia's baptismal ceremony. When I asked Robert to reach out to Catherine, she called me the very next day.
You're planning a celebration, right? Your parents are coming too, aren't they? Well, as much as I'd rather not bother, I suppose I can't skip it. Let's have it at the restaurant our family has always favored. I can't trust the kind of place someone who eats apples with the peel on would choose.
It was clear from her tone that Catherine was in a great mood, having regained Robert's attention. But of course, she couldn't help adding a jab.
I heard from Robert that Amelia cries all the time. He was complaining that he can't sleep at night. When Robert was a baby, he ate well and slept well. It's strange, isn't it? Amelia must have inherited her tantrums from you, Emily.
That brief phone call left me exhausted. Robert spent all his non-working hours with Catherine. Even though she's his mother, it must be a heavy burden. While I was saddened by Robert's frequent absences, I realized how crucial his shielding was to prevent worse situations. I felt grateful and thanked him for protecting Amelia and me. However, the preparations for Amelia's celebration led to an unexpected betrayal that shattered my trust in Robert. One Sunday, I reluctantly went to the restaurant where we planned to hold the celebration. The event was scheduled for the following week, but I needed to confirm something. I had even left Amelia with my mother to come here. The restaurant had an impressive gate, an open garden, and was located in a quiet, charming area slightly removed from the busy downtown. It was the finest restaurant in the region. After waiting in front of the gate for a while, I saw a flashy-looking woman and a young girl step out. The woman, likely in her mid-20s, was still very young. The little girl, around 4 or 5, was restless, jumping and running around.
Daddy? Hurry up.
It seemed her father was still inside as she called out loudly.
That meal was boring. Hey, let's go buy some toys now.
Despite the restaurant's elegance, it was clear a family-friendly place would have been more enjoyable for a child.
All right. Sorry to keep you waiting, Mary.
The man, carrying bags for the entire family, jogged over to the girl with a gentle smile. That man was unmistakably Robert. No matter how many times I blinked or how much I wanted it to be a lie, the man smiling kindly was undeniably Robert.
Daddy, you're so slow. After lunch, you're going to buy me a birthday present, right?
Yeah, what do you want for your birthday? I'll get you anything you like.
With his hands full of bags and carrying the little girl called Mary, Robert answered her cheerfully. Mary, clearly excited about her birthday, kept playfully slapping Robert's face. Even though it must have hurt a little, Robert just accepted it with a gentle smile.
Hey, my face hurts.
While forgiving everything isn't necessarily love, Robert's affection for Mary seemed deep. To avoid being hit on the nose, Robert slightly turned his face away.
Oh,
The blissful expression on Robert's face froze as soon as his eyes met mine. Even then, Mary continued smacking his face. Frustrated by Robert's lack of reaction, Mary slapped his cheek as hard as she could. Robert remained unresponsive, only darting his eyes nervously from side to side. At that moment, the woman who seemed to be his mistress noticed me too. Caught between his mistress and his wife, Robert broke into a cold sweat and panicked silently. Mary, apparently disgusted by the greasy residue on her hands from Robert's sweat, frowned and stopped hitting him.
Daddy, you're gross.
Daddy, I see. Most likely, Amelia doesn't recognize Robert as her daddy. Not because she's only 3 months old, but because someone who barely shows up is nothing more than a stranger to her. But that's fine. If Amelia grows up thinking she never had a daddy to begin with, it'll be easier. After all, Robert is someone else's daddy now. You have another family. Best wishes. I forced the biggest smile I could muster and said it in a bright voice.
wait. It's not what you think. Please wait.
Looking pale as a sheet, Robert shouted desperately. Ignoring his panicked voice, I gave a polite nod to the woman I assumed to be his mistress and walked away. Robert tried to follow me but hesitated because he was holding Mary.
Daddy? Hey, my toy.
What? A toy? Yeah. Oh, Emily, wait.
He's not even trying that hard to chase after me clearly. Mary, who seems to be his mistress's child, is more important to him than Amelia and me. I felt certain of it.
If you get divorced, it's all your fault.
Catherine's words echoed in my mind. Catherine, who endlessly insulted me with things like, "You look ugly without makeup," or "Peeled apple." I wonder what excuses she'll come up with when she finds out Robert has been living a double life. A divorce wouldn't be my fault. After all, Robert already has another family. I pulled the divorce papers I had prepared from my bag and unfolded them. The document was a little crumpled, so I smoothed it out with my hand. I'll set Robert free. Without hesitation, I submitted the divorce papers to the courthouse. Afterward, I headed straight to Catherine's house.
Emily, what brings you here all of a sudden? If you're coming, you should have told me first.
Catherine glared at me irritably. I wished she would remember how she used to show up unannounced at my house with a newborn and bombard me with snide remarks.
You show up here unannounced and empty-handed. How rude. Even among family, there should be manners. You really are all about appearances, aren't you?
After listening to her typical greeting of backhanded comments, I replied, "I'm sorry. It was rude of me to visit someone else's home without prior notice." Until just a moment ago, I was family. But now I'm a complete stranger. Oh, but since there's no need for us to associate anymore.
What?
Catherine frowned in annoyance, and I gave her a bright smile as I said, I've divorced Robert.
That's a lie.
She must have thought I was some emotionless robot. No matter how much pressure she put on me to be the perfect wife to avoid divorce, anyone, unless they were a robot, would think of divorce after enduring that level of constant insults. It was Catherine who pushed me to my breaking point. Her gaping in shock now is what's truly absurd.
Why? Is it because I called you ugly over something like that? But it's true. You really lack patience. Still, divorce? That's embarrassing. You can't do this.
Even in her panic, Catherine didn't forget her snide remarks.
When I got divorced, everyone made a huge fuss about it. If Robert gets divorced too, what will the relatives say? Divorce is absolutely out of the question. I won't allow it. I overlooked your looks and let you stay married, and this is how you repay me. I even treat Amelia, who was born unattractive because of your genes, with love. Look, I'm even attending Amelia's baptism next week and preparing the customary gift money. After all this kindness, what more could you possibly complain about?
Catherine insisted that all the problems were solely my fault. She had no idea that her beloved, responsible, and kind Robert had a secret. I don't recall being treated kindly by you. Please don't come to the celebration. We're strangers now. Without losing the polite smile I reserved for strangers, I told Catherine firmly.
Enough. Stop going on about being strangers. There's no need for a divorce. Fine, I get it. It's because I'm too nagging, isn't it? All right, I'll keep my mouth shut since I'm just an old woman. I won't call you ugly anymore, and I'll dote on poor Amelia, who unfortunately inherited her mother's unattractiveness. Is that enough for you, my dear daughter-in-law?
Catherine always looked down on me, so there was no way she could suddenly treat me as an equal. Not that I ever wanted equality with her, but since this was the end, I decided to pull her down a peg. The genes definitely passed down to Robert as well.
What?
Dropping my polite smile, I delivered the truth to Catherine. He inherited them perfectly from your ex-husband. Robert is just as much of a cheater as he was.
Oh my God.
The fire in Catherine's demeanor extinguished instantly as her shoulders slumped, her whole body losing its strength. The countless cruel words from you were one reason I decided to divorce. But the real deal breaker was Robert's infidelity. Catherine, you truly can't forgive cheating, can you? I completely understand why you decided to divorce your ex-husband. Catherine was at a loss for words, unable to even breathe properly. She shook her head, unwilling to acknowledge Robert's betrayal. Catherine, Robert has his mistress and even an illegitimate child. The child is a little girl, about 4 or 5 years old. So, technically, I was his other woman, and he married his mistress and had a child with her. Complicated, isn't it? Well, to put it simply, Robert is just a cheating scumbag. Catherine had always harbored deep resentment toward her ex-husband. She had been cheated on, unfairly blamed for the divorce by her relatives, and perhaps Robert was her only emotional support. To find out that Robert, of all people, had followed the same path as the man she despised must have been impossible for her to accept.
That's not true.
It is true. Robert is just like his father, a cheating scumbag.
No, it can't be.
Catherine's lips quivered and tears welled up in her eyes. She weakly looked to the heavens, muttering something as though praying to God. I only came to inform you that I divorced Robert because of his infidelity. Well then, Catherine, thank you for everything, short as it was. As I left, the only sound behind me was Catherine's heavy breathing. It was hard to imagine someone as strong-willed as her continuing to cry for long. I worried that Catherine might ultimately blame me for everything, so I decided to leave the house I had shared with Robert immediately. Since I was going back to my parents' house, it wouldn't take long for Robert and Catherine to figure out where I was. As expected, Robert bombarded me with calls and messages, saying things like, "You're misunderstanding. Let's talk this out. Mom is in shock. And please come back." But I ignored all of them. 2 days later, an impatient Robert and Catherine showed up at my parents' house.
You've really misunderstood, Emily.
Robert began, not even offering an apology before launching into his excuses.
That day, it was just a coworker's daughter's birthday party. Well, something like that. I couldn't say no because it was a work thing. And that girl doesn't have a father, so she was just joking around calling me daddy. It was so awkward.
I couldn't believe how poorly thought out his lie was, especially after having 2 days to come up with something better. Still, Catherine seemed to buy it completely and was firmly on Robert's side.
See, Emily, you jump to conclusions. When you listen, it turns out it was just a work-related event. You might not understand being a piano teacher in such a small world, but office workers like Robert have it tough. Can't you show a little appreciation for Robert, who's out there working so hard?
We were in the guest room of my parents' house. Catherine, mindful of my parents' presence, was keeping her tone polite, but she couldn't help sneaking in a few jabs at me. My father's temple twitched, but he maintained a calm demeanor as he began speaking.
I see. So it was a birthday party he attended for work.
That's right.
Robert nodded enthusiastically. My father gave him a slow nod in return.
Work obligations can be tough.
Yes.
And yet, every year, Robert has been attending the same birthday party. Looking back, it seems he's also been attending other events, making sure to show up for every occasion.
The color drained from Robert's face, which had been plastered with an awkward smile.
That restaurant, I hear, is one Robert has been fond of since he was a child. What a coincidence. We also frequent that place.
Robert's eyes widened, and he audibly gulped. Given that we live in the same area, it wasn't surprising that we might visit the same restaurant.
It so happens I know someone at that restaurant. While staff are generally tight-lipped, this person felt compelled to speak up, even at the risk of their own job.
My father fixed Robert with a piercing gaze. Despite the cool room, sweat poured down Robert's face.
They told me Robert occasionally visits the restaurant with another family.
Since childhood, Robert had celebrated his birthdays at that restaurant with Catherine. Perhaps he saw it as the natural place for important celebrations.
5 years ago, Robert celebrated the baptism for a baby with a flashy young woman there. Since then, he's been returning for every one of the child's milestone celebrations. And yet, he had the nerve to plan Amelia's baptism ceremony at the same place, even meeting with us there without batting an eye.
Last year, Robert had celebrated Mary's birthday at the restaurant, just before meeting my parents there. According to my father's acquaintance, the situation raised questions. At first, they assumed it was a divorce, followed by a quick remarriage. And out of respect for the customer's private matters, they stayed silent. However, this year, there was yet another birthday celebration for Mary. Furthermore, a reservation for Amelia's baptism followed, which deepened their suspicions, leading them to share everything with my father. So, you had a family even before marrying me. Why didn't you take care of them instead of marrying me?
Well, that's...
Robert averted his eyes, glancing briefly at Catherine. Catherine, still in shock, seemed unable to process what was happening. If you're just going to stay silent, can you leave? Honestly, I don't even want to see your face. I'll be requesting alimony through my lawyer. Since the divorce is already finalized, there's no need for us to meet unless you have something to discuss, right?
The divorce is finalized?
Even though I had clearly told him about the divorce, his surprise baffled me. Robert, did you forget that you already signed the divorce papers?
Oh.
Right after Amelia was born, Catherine showed up unannounced with an unbelievable gift. It was divorce papers already filled out by Robert. She likely intended to use the threat of divorce to create a power dynamic where I would serve as the obedient wife she envisioned.
Do you understand what will happen if you get divorced?
Catherine had said, trying to intimidate me. The result was me fearing the consequences of divorce, while Catherine, who cared deeply about appearances, was satisfied that I would comply. But I never became the puppet Catherine wanted. Thanks to Catherine for holding on to the signed divorce papers, I was able to submit them quickly. Thank you, Catherine. After all, cheating is absolutely unforgivable, isn't it? Her shallow plan to control me had backfired and ended up being used against her. Robert, now at a loss, bit his lip.
No, I just wanted to build a normal, simple life with Emily.
A normal, simple life? A home where the father is playing daddy elsewhere isn't normal or simple. And staying at Catherine's house. That was a lie, wasn't it? You were just stopping by to check on her briefly before going back to your young mistress and your adorable illegitimate child, right? When I confronted him, Robert dropped his head onto the table and didn't lift it again. In other words, he essentially admitted that he had been enjoying his life with his mistress.
Robert is such a responsible, good boy. He's never even crossed paths with flashy young women in his life. This has to be some kind of mistake. Isn't that right, Robert? Robert doesn't hang around flashy women, and cheating is completely out of the question, isn't it?
Catherine's anguished voice echoed through the silent guest room. Robert, still slumped over the table, gave a small shake of his head.
What is it, Robert? See, it's not true, right? It's all a misunderstanding, isn't it?
Robert shook his head again. Catherine, interpreting this as a denial of the affair, immediately brightened, her eyes lighting up.
See? It's not true. This is all Emily's misunderstanding. I've believed in Robert from the start. Robert has always been a responsible, good boy. There's no way such a good boy would cheat with some flashy woman. Oh, thank goodness. Robert really is a good boy.
While my parents and I sat in awkward silence, Catherine was getting excited all by herself.
It's fine. Robert is a good boy.
She gently patted Robert's head.
Stop it.
What?
Robert muttered in a small voice, then suddenly lifted his head and pushed Catherine's hand away.
I said stop it.
Robert?
It must have been the first time that the responsible, good boy Robert had raised his voice.
I'm sick of being called a responsible good boy.
Catherine couldn't hide her confusion.
I married Emily to shut you up, Mom. You wouldn't stop nagging me to get married. You wanted me to build a simple life with a refined woman. That's why I went along and married Emily, the woman you picked for me. You would never have accepted the person I really love.
Robert stood up abruptly, clenching his fists, and shouted.
I like flashy women.
Catherine's trembling eyes were overtaken by despair. Robert's mistress was undeniably flashy. Even from a distance, her thick lashes and heavy makeup were obvious. She didn't match Robert, who was the picture of seriousness, at all. But I had no intention of commenting on someone else's preferences.
Lies.
But it's true. I've always been plain and invisible. When I went to my high school reunion, everyone was like, "Who are you again?" It hurt so much. I wanted to have a bright, exciting youth like the flashy kids.
Robert poured his heart out with great intensity. It turned out I had been used as a cover for Catherine's pride in Robert's disguise. How ridiculous. The words slipped out of my mouth before I could stop them.
Ridiculous? You don't get it. I've been struggling with this my whole life. Sure, people call it being serious, but it just meant I was a nobody, someone no one cared about. I wanted to have fun and enjoy life with flashy kids too, but Mom cursed me into being a good boy and I couldn't escape it.
Even after hearing all this, I still thought it was ridiculous. But seeing Robert on the verge of tears, I held my tongue.
I'm sorry for using you, Emily, and I guess this counts as cheating, so I'll pay the alimony. I'm really sorry.
Since dealing with his unresolved teenage angst would be a hassle, I simply nodded. The real issue was Catherine. She was gasping like a fish out of water, drool foaming at the corners of her mouth.
My Robert.
Sort her out, will you? I sent a silent plea to Robert with my eyes, and he seemed to understand.
Come on, Mom, let's go. I'm divorced from Emily now, so stop interfering. It's fine. My girlfriend may look flashy, but she's a good person inside.
After spilling his true feelings, Robert somehow found the courage to tell Catherine about his mistress. Realizing what was coming, Catherine's face grew even paler. Robert, now standing taller and more confident for some reason, gave polite goodbyes to me and my parents before pulling Catherine out of the house.
My Robert.
I should have been the angriest person in the room, having been cheated on even before the marriage. But Catherine's vacant state left me strangely calm. While I could easily sever ties, it would be much harder for Catherine to cut off her son. Good luck. I muttered this almost absent-mindedly. Later, Robert tried to marry his mistress, but she dumped him.
Living with him for 3 months was such a hassle. There's no way I could marry him.
She apparently wanted Robert to continue being a convenient source of money while she enjoyed her freedom. When I filed for alimony from her, I received an unexpected response.
You can have Robert instead of money.
No, thank you. I don't want him. I politely declined and instead received alimony from her more responsible parents. The fact that he couldn't marry his mistress seemed to be a huge shock to Robert, leaving him deeply disappointed. After some time, Robert managed to pull himself together and pursued his desire to fit in with the flashy crowd he had long admired. Instead of befriending flashy people, Robert transformed himself into one. But rather than adopting a trendy, clean-cut modern style, he embraced a bold 90s-inspired flashy fashion. Robert fully recreated the look he had admired back then, even though he was now over 30 years old. He looked as if he had time traveled straight from the past. It was quite cringeworthy, but I figured that as long as he was enjoying himself, it wasn't my concern. However, Robert was struggling. 2 years after our divorce, during a visitation with Amelia, Robert opened up about his struggles.
I feel like I don't belong at work.
Apparently, he had tried to be bright and outgoing, boldly speaking up to his bosses and clients. He approached his workplace with the mindset that flashy people are cheerful and friends with everyone, but it backfired.
Why am I the only one who can't get it right? I've been at this company for years, but no one even remembered my name. They'd forget to invite me to office parties. Since I started dressing like this, they remember my name, but now everyone acts distant. What's wrong with me?
Instead of becoming friends with everyone, Robert found himself isolated. Eventually, he was stripped of his managerial role and transferred to a window-side department. I doubt his flashy fashion and behavior alone caused such a demotion. He must have misunderstood what it means to be cheerful and made some serious missteps.
My only solace is Amelia.
When Robert leaned his cheek toward young Amelia, she made an obvious face of disgust.
Stranger danger, scary.
She just had an emergency drill to deal with suspicious people at the preschool. In Amelia's eyes, Robert's flashy appearance made him look like a suspicious person.
Stranger danger?
It's true, he did have a look that made you not want to get involved. Completely losing confidence in his flashy fashion, Robert eventually gave it up and reverted to his original serious, good guy look. But the image he had cultivated was hard to shake off. His demoted role at work remained unchanged.
Where did I go wrong?
Even though his work lacked fulfillment, Robert had no choice but to keep at it for the sake of child support. His salary had dropped significantly compared to before, and no matter how much effort he put in, his colleagues' attitudes toward him remained cold. He discovered that his mistress had no genuine feelings for him, and his dreams of a peaceful life with me and Amelia had long since shattered. The relationship between Robert and Catherine, who once adored her son, was completely broken. Even now, realizing his mistakes, the things Robert had lost were enormous. 10 years passed, and Robert continued living a quiet, unremarkable life. Being naturally responsible, he never missed a child support payment. Still stuck in the same unremarkable position at work, He seemed to be just scraping by while supporting 2 children. I recently ran into Catherine for the first time in years at a shopping mall. She was being dragged around by a flashy-looking teenage girl, stopping at every store to open her wallet. On closer inspection, it turned out to be Mary. Even though it had been 10 years since we last saw each other, Catherine rushed over the moment our eyes met.
How's Amelia? She's not getting into trouble, is she? My granddaughter must be a responsible, good girl.
Before I could answer, Mary grabbed Catherine and pulled her to the next store. Apparently, child support alone wasn't enough, so Mary was relying on Catherine for extra spending.
I'm out of money already. Please, give me a break.
For Catherine, interacting with someone like this felt like dealing with a person from another world, and it seemed she would never fully come to terms with it. As for Amelia, she's not the responsible, good child Catherine wishes for. A few years ago, she was a kind and obedient child, but now she's in the middle of her rebellious phase. Her constant backtalk and nitpicky arguments sometimes make my fists clench in frustration. But that's okay. It's a sign that she's developing her own identity and taking her first steps toward adulthood. Amelia, want to play the piano together?
No way, that sounds like such a pain.
Still, for some reason, she always makes time for the piano. When we play duets together, it feels like our hearts are in sync. Being a good child doesn't mean just obeying everything a parent says. Having a relationship where rebellion is possible is important too. Until Amelia's rebellious phase eventually settles, I'll continue to watch over her with warmth and patience.